Let's start with data infrastructure because it sets the stage for everything. Brandon, take us away.
Thanks, Mike. So in this release, we focused a lot on the RevOps persona. RevOps have a really hard job. They're responsible for contact data. They're responsible for making sure that account executives use the workflow properly.
That they hit their quotas, they're responsible for the output of the sales team.
Yeah, they're like the underpinning of a lot of sales motion. So we've focused and we've chatted and actually flew to some customers and made sure that we have this as dialed as possible. And the thing that we're gonna focus on is territory planning, which historically has been a really hard problem for companies to do. It takes hours of research. Sometimes the AEs are doing that, which means they're not selling. And it's really hard to do it at scale. So we're gonna dive into the account research mode in Pursuit. And you can start from any data source. You can start from your CSV list. You can start from your CRM. You can start from Pursuit's root account list. I've selected 6 entities here that I'm gonna walk through, and something that we've built is default prompts. This is just data that you get right out of the box, and it makes it super easy to just get you going within, honestly, 10 minutes, but let's be realistic and say 2 hours of using Pursuit. So some of those default prompts are leadership changes, right? We've also included all of the census data, NCS data, and fiscal year, right? Are they in the middle of their fiscal year? Let's go ahead and add some census data here. I'm gonna go for population density and median household income. Now, as always, you can run any custom prompts you want. So if you're selling ERP software, you might wanna know about strategic initiatives that is going on in that entity. You might wanna use our FOIA data that find out any competitors that they're using. Give me the expiration date. Give me the amount they paid, right?
Do they have an out clause? Like imagine anything that you would tell a rep, like this is a good account if, and then you can just have Pursuit go do that research.
Yep. So as you can see here, competitor presence for Cook County. They have Tyler Tech. Their contract starts here, and the value is $29 million. The operating budget, right? Are they growing? What's the percent of change year over year? That might be really helpful to understand if they're buying new software. One thing that we've heard is co-op contracts used. If we're on Omnia, that makes the sale a lot easier. Fiscal stress indicators, and one really cool thing that we've introduced in this release is nearby customers. So I'm gonna go ahead and I want to go into my CRM, I want to choose the fields that we identify as a customer, whether that's an account type or an opportunity or a custom object, we support it all. And I'm going to say, hey, give me the search radius of 50 miles and give me the next 3 nearest customers. And this is really helpful not only to put in a prospecting email, but also for account scoring. We know that if a neighbor is using software, it makes it a lot easier of a sale.
Totally.
So let's dive into the account scoring thing, which is really cool and allows you to do territory planning and prioritization at scale. So Mike, I'm gonna give it to you in a second to talk about what we've seen with customers, but right now I wanna just run this. And let's assume that we're selling ERP software. So we wanna know the strategic initiatives. We wanna know if there's any competitors, and the operating budget, co-op contracts used, nearby customers, and you can now choose these variables and how important they are, right? Nearby customers might be, a 3, it might be really high. Co-op contracts used isn't gonna stop us from making the deal, but it's helpful. Competitor presence is definitely a really important thing. Census data, right? We've found that median household income, just from talking to our reps and selling for years, we know that that's a really important one. So one really important key here is to give the context to Pursuit so it understands how to actually evaluate all of those. So I'm gonna go ahead and write out, we sell ERP software. If they use Omnia as a cooperative contract, that's super important to us. Nearby customers makes it an easier sale. If they have high fiscal stress indicators, if their pension is off balance, that makes it a lot harder to sell into. And if their budget is less than 200 million, that's not as important to us. Anything else you want to add, Mike?
Did you say the part you said about the co-ops, right?
Yep.
No,
Cool.
I think that's good.
Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and run that. And while that's running, can you tell us about?
Yeah, for sure. So what we've seen here, there's two things I would add. Number one is like a lot of private equity backed companies that we work with have some kind of board mandated process where they have to stack rank the customers and the prospects. And the whole theory is you want to make sure that your AEs are spending time with accounts that are ready to buy, because that's how you're efficient from a go-to-market perspective. That's how you hit your rule of 40, which is now rule of 60. So what we've seen is if your average close rate is, let's just say 20%, when you have a highly ranked account, it'll close at 2x the rate. So if your close rate's 20, the highly ranked accounts will close at 40% of the time, which is night and day difference. But also if it's a D account, AKA a lower rated account, it will close at 10% of the average. So 40% versus 2% close rates, that's the difference if you're an AE between hitting your number or not, and if you're a CRO, it's the difference between your whole org making their number or not. And like Brandon said, back in the day before Pursuit, you'd have to kind of guess at a lot of this stuff because it was, some of it's hidden behind FOIAs and you have to do a lot of manual research. So at best, people are kind of like finger in the air picking 10 accounts and trying to score those. But here we're able to do it for an entire, like literally tens of thousands of accounts. The second thing I would say, which you'll get to how we rerun this in a second, but as the strategy shifts for a company, you can also change what we're scoring in here. So let's say, for instance, you acquire a new product and there's not a ton of data on that product. You can still build an account score for it based off of the factors that you see here. So you buy a new procurement tool, you can ask Pursuit to look up information about their procurement initiatives, for instance.
Yeah, thank you. So this is ran, and you can see that Cook County got a 65. As someone who's been selling for years, you might understand, I would expect that to be more of an 80. Let's dive in why. We give you all of the reasoning and context based on every column that you gave us. So the account is a strong match primarily due to its use of Omnia and its primary cooperative contract, its significantly large operating budget, both of which are key positive indicators, which is exactly what we told it. So might need some tinkering, but let's go ahead and actually introduce this into our AE's workflow. We want this to live everywhere our AEs do. So one really cool thing you can do is you can actually have this run quarterly. As Mike said, priorities might change, products might shift, and
new people might get hired, and you want to make sure if there's a new finance director that gets brought in, that person's going to want to take a look at the tech stack.
Leadership changes, right? So you can go ahead and you can say, hey, rerun this column quarterly and automatically add as many actions as you want. We support emailing. We support exporting to Salesforce, HubSpot. And something that we've also introduced this release is Webhook and Zapier. So you can automatically pass this to, maybe you have some really cool custom outreach sequence that you want to do via Zapier, and you can automatically use the nearby customers column and the account score to kind of dial in that workflow. So I'm going to go ahead and add email and webhook, and you can save those changes. The one other thing is, so we now have that dialed into all of our workflows and CRM, but one thing we might want is when AEs are using the Chrome extension, we want that to be the first thing they see. So you can go ahead here and click Pin to Team, and that will allow your reps, anytime they're on a Salesforce opportunity, anytime they're on a government website, they open up the Pursuit Chrome extension, all of the data that you expect them to have is sitting there for them.
And time out there. I think that, and I'll cover the Chrome extension in a second. It's a super important feature, but the nice thing about this is that from a RevOps point of view, you get to decide what your reps see, what research is right in front of them, so that they don't have to go do that, right? Because we all know reps are going from call to call to call, and they might not have time to do the prep that they need, so they can just quickly, boop, open the Chrome extension and have right there all the information that you think they need. It really does bring a lot of leverage to a sales team.
So in this winter release, we've increased data coverage exponentially in two different ways. One is Canadian entities, which we'll get to in a second, and two is FOIA coverage. FOIA data is not new to Pursuit. We've had purchase orders for the last 5 years, but unfortunately, purchase orders really only give you vendor name, a light description, the amount they paid, and the payment date. What's really important is contract data for your competitors. That Contracts that we can FOIA come with expiration, the SKUs. Did they use a co-op contract? Is there any out language? This is all super important to pipe into that previous workflows that we talked about, account scoring, getting it into your CRM. If you're a current or future customer, please let's talk. We can find a way to get all of your competitors' contracts into Pursuit. The second thing I want to talk about is Canadian data, our neighbors to the north. Or, fun fact, since we're in Detroit, it's the only place where Canada is actually south. So we've ingested the same way that we've done for all of our domestic US entities, contact data, FOIA coverage, agenda, city council, strategic plans for around 3,000 Canadian entities, and that works in the same way. You can automatically work those into any workflow you need. And the last thing in data infrastructure I want to talk about is what we're calling contact graph. That's a GovTech first, and there's a reason it's a GovTech first. It's really hard to identify an individual that has moved across entities and know for certain that it's the same person. The way other contact providers outside of the public sector do this is LinkedIn. A majority of contacts in the government we found do not have a LinkedIn. So we've invented a proprietary algorithm to use a bunch of different variables and sources to actually identify that person as a root contact. And what will happen now in Pursuit is you can see in the contact graph under each contact that you'll be able to identify that a person has moved from an entity and where they exist today. So that automatically gets piped into your CRM. Now there's a second thing that contact graph actually introduces, which is really cool, and this is what we're calling an influential factor. If somebody is at the state agency level and you see their name across a bunch of different counties as on a document or on a FOIA piece of data, you can actually see that that person is probably managing and signing a lot of different contracts at the state agency level. This is super helpful for your AEs and the sales motion to understand how influential that person is. With Pursuit, you now get those two things directly piped into your CRM and built into all of the workflows that you already have built.